Today we are learning some of the iridology markers that suggest a predisposition to female hormone issues. The truth is that for most female hormone issues, we need to connect 2 or 3 markings together to build a case. Rarely, if ever, will we see one marker that teaches us everything we need to know about the risks of hormone imbalance a woman faces. So we're going to actually look at 7 different cases, 7 different sets of eyes, ranging from women in their early 20s to women in their early 50s. I thank you for coming. Even though we're only going to be together for a short while, I promise to make this time well invested. Now, I always schedule 90 minutes for these sessions just in case we need it, and I hope you've blocked off 90 minutes as well. I encourage you to stay with me to the very end because I've got an exciting announcement to make, and I'll give you a hint. It's something that many of my webinar attendees have been asking for. Regardless of whether your specialty is in nutrition or herbology, I know you will leave our session today with information you can use with your clients. One thing I've learned in my many years in the holistic wellness industry is that excellent healers keep learning. So congratulations for being in the small minority of practitioners and healers who continue to learn and who strive to give your best and be your best for your clients. I am excited to have you with me. I like to tweak my webinars on the fly just a little bit to meet the needs of my attendees. And so I have a question that I would appreciate you answering, and I'm really going to ask you to play all in when I ask you to register an answer on a poll or type something in so that we can have a little more interaction. It makes it so much easier than teaching to what I call a silent audience. So here is the first poll that I would love it if you would take a moment and participate in. What training do you have in holistic health already? So you can click as many as fit you. If you have nutrition under your belt and herbology, homeopathy, naturopathy, body work, energy work, or not much yet because you're just starting out, go ahead and check whatever applies to you. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. Everybody participated in that. That's great. Okay, we're going to close that. And we've got from all of the holistic fields represented here. So this is exciting. We've got a well-read group today. So just before we start learning new iris markings, as I promised you, I want to also know if you have any iridology training under your belt. So just another quick little poll to see. Now, I needed to hide just a moment. Sometimes I'm better with technology than other times. You know, that's just life. Okay, so what iridology training do you have? Not much yet. You're just starting out. Have you been trained in Jensenian iridology or constitutional iridology? Have you been certified by the International Iridology Practitioners Association? Or are you certified by another school or another organization? Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. So we've got mostly people who have already got constitutional iridology under their belt. How fun is that? Thank you so much for participating in that for me. Now, hopefully you were taught how to integrate what you know with the iridology that you've already got, and you are able to see the benefits of doing that. And some of you likely have excellent training, but were never taught how to integrate your nutrition or your herbology with your iridology. And some of you are wondering about iridology and how you could actually integrate it into your practice to make your practice more effective or easier. in the education process of becoming a nutrition practitioner or a herbalist or a naturopath, we are taught a great deal of information and a lot of great information as well. But there are some things we aren't taught that can leave us struggling until we either sort it out on our own or we find a mentor who can guide us, or sometimes we just give up in frustration. So one of the first challenges that I've seen a lot of is that when students graduate and they're now practitioners, they don't know exactly where to start in their recommendations or how to set therapeutic priorities. And that becomes a challenge because you know so much good stuff, right? You've studied, you know your stuff, but as you're working with your clients, you sometimes have a hard time finding that starting point. And if you're using an intake questionnaire, excuse me, you may find that it just muddies the waters. It asks so many questions that are not relevant to your client, and it just adds confusion. So maybe you'd like help learning how to find your starting point and how to create therapeutic sequences for each client. The second challenge that I've seen is that many nutritionists and herbalists spend a lot of their own time doing research and program development for their clients, which is fine, but they do it on their own time when they're not getting paid for it. And oftentimes for each 1 hour of client time that they're actually paid for, they're investing 2 or 3 or 4 hours of their own time for free. Not a great way to make a living. And I'm not saying that we're necessarily in this to get rich quick. We do want to give good value, but we do need to make enough of a living to support ourselves and pay our bills. Giving our time away for free is not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. And the reason we run into this problem of going and doing all this research is usually because in school, we were not taught how to isolate a problem and work on that one problem and then go to the next problem and work on it. We were taught to write case histories, right? You were given a description or you were given a real person to work with and you interrogated them under bright lights, right? And maybe even had them blindfolded. I'm just kidding. And got all their notes. And then you went and you did all this research and wrote this magnificent program for them. But when you bring that program or that report back to them, it is overwhelming for your clients. And you've given them so much information that they come back for that second appointment, but they don't ever need to come back again because they got everything they needed. Or they are so overwhelmed that they know they couldn't do it all. So why bother even starting? Do any of these sound familiar? Maybe a little like I've been watching you. If you're guilty of any of these things, would you just raise your hand there and just know that I'm the only one that can see the hands going up? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So how do I know that these are your challenges? I know that because I have been there myself. When I started in this industry nearly 40 years ago, you should have seen how complicated the homework was that I would generate for my clients when, man, it was bad. Even with using Iridology, because no one had taught me how to integrate Iridology and let it and my clients' needs guide the sessions. No one taught me how to break the homework down into doable, non-threatening pieces. And I know these are your challenges because I've interviewed a lot of other nutritionists, herbalists, and other holistic practitioners, and almost all of them have been there too. Most of them are still there. So if you are there now, you are not alone and you don't need to stay there. So who am I and what qualifies me to share this fabulous information with you? Well, that's a picture of me. I'm Judith Cobb. I've been a holistic health coach since 1981. A master herbalist since '83. a nutritional consulting practitioner since '94. This is a designation with the International Organization of Nutritional Consultants. I added natural nutrition clinical practitioner in 2016. This is with the Canadian Association of Natural Nutrition Practitioners. In '93, I became a certified iridologist. And in 2016, I took that leap into hyperspace and became a certified comprehensive iridology instructor. I've been teaching wellness professionals since 1985. Now, I don't know what the holistic education climate is like where you are, but where I live in 1985, there was not much to choose from here. There were very few classes, if any. Most of our training was either by traveling out to attend seminars and workshops or conferences, or we would buy correspondence courses, where the teacher would mail us an audio cassette and materials, and we would do the homework. We would mail the homework back, wait for them to mark it, and then send us the next lesson on audio cassette. Okay, I'm dating myself. But because of all that, I decided as I learned that there was a huge gap. And so I started teaching. And I started teaching any wellness professionals that I knew more than. And there were a few, quite a few actually. In addition to all of this, I am a wife of one, a mom of 7, and a grandma of 7. And that is where truly my proudest accomplishments are. But you need to know that as I've built my business over all of those years while having and raising all of those children, I've made every mistake. I'm very sure I've made every mistake that a person can make in building their wellness practice. I've spent a lot of time and a lot of money, and a lot of that time and money was not wisely spent. But the lesson I learned was not to do it that way again. So there was value in it. Less of it was spent with excellent teachers and excellent programs that have helped me build to where I am now. So would it work for you if I could begin to teach you today some of what I've learned to save you some time, some money, and frustration? If it would, just go ahead and raise your hand. Awesome. Thank you. I love that everyone's participating so well. Thank you. Sometimes we don't get that kind of participation, so I appreciate it. So if you're new to iridology, you are in for a treat today because I'm going to give you some really great stuff. Here's what some of what you're going to learn today. And those of you who already have iridology training, this still does apply to you. Iridology can help you eliminate your intake forms. You all need a waiver or a release form, that permission, informed consent thing. We all need to do that. That's how we protect ourselves. But you can throw away your list of questions. Seriously, you can. Iridology will help you start creating deep rapport from the moment you start the consultation, instead of starting with you looking down to read that awful intake form. I don't know if you've been to a massage practitioner or an acupuncturist or a medical doctor recently, but even no matter when, they have an interesting way of doing things. And I'm not necessarily saying it's the best way. In the days when they had paper records, the receptionist would put your file in the little holder outside the office. You'd wait in the consultation room and the doctor or practitioner would pick your file up on the way in. As they opened the door, they were opening your file and looking down to read it. Rarely did they ever glance up at you. They would get your name off the file. Hello, Mrs. Cobb, how are you today? I just wanted to jump right into their hands and spread myself out over the open file and go, I'm not good today. That's why I'm here, right? Now, the other thing that's happening now is with electronic and digital records. The doctor or practitioner comes into the office, into the consult room, goes straight to the computer, opens your file on the computer, and spends their time looking at their computer, usually with their back to you, while they are talking to you. Now, those are not great ways to develop rapport. Just saying. Iridology will change all of that for you. Iridology will help you do a core assessment in less than 5 minutes, know the right questions to ask, prioritize what needs to be dealt with first, and create therapeutic priorities for your future consultations. And it will all tie in to the shopping list of what your client needs your help with. Iridology will help you get rid of that unpaid homework time. No more spending 2 and 3 and 4 hours of your own time writing fancy reports that are going to scare your client away. And stop overwhelming your client. You know, I've had a lot of students who were certified by other schools, but they were never taught how to integrate the iridology with what they already did. So they couldn't connect iridology to herbology or iridology to nutrition. And it is such a shame. Now, if that's you, stay tuned, because you're going to see the kind of power and clarity iridology can add to your consultations. With iridology, you can gather that base of information, let it teach you what questions to ask, and that base that you're gathering becomes your intake interview. That assessment becomes a rapport building intake without wasting your client's time filling out 2 or 3 or 20 pages of intake. I recently spoke with a practitioner. I was fascinated by this because she did what we were all guilty of in the early days, and we may still be guilty of this now. She had a client in her office who had booked 1 hour, and 3 hours later, the client was still there. Yeah, that's not a great way to practice. You're overwhelming your client with too much information. Client can't handle that. Even the most brilliant clients can't handle that. They all think they can, but when they leave, they're confused and they don't know where to start with what you've just taught them. The other thing this practitioner said was she had given her client a 4-page intake, and it was an older client. As she started filling out the form, the client said, "This hurts my hands." Yeah, so let's get rid of those intake forms. Let's just do the release form with name, address, phone number, signature saying they know what they're in for, and let it go. Now, if you're guilty of giving away 3 hours for the price of 1, or if you're guilty of using a lengthy intake form, let's have you raise your hand. And I hope that's not any of you, but if it is, we'll help you. Oh dear. Okay, well, thank you for your honesty, because we are going to start helping you with this today. So important, so important. All right. Now, most of you have some iridology background, so you know that this is what you need in order to do iridology well, right? Wrong. This is a beautiful iridology camera. It's my camera. I love it. It's an Iris Explorer from Iris Labs. I love, love, love this camera. But if you are in the early stages of learning iridology, or maybe you've been trained elsewhere, but you don't know if you love iridology yet, do not spend $5,000 on a camera. Don't even spend $2,000 on a camera. Do not buy a camera. It seems silly to me to invest that kind of money in something that's going to sit around. I had a student about 8 years ago who was certified by a very big name in the US. And in the scope of doing the iridology training with this teacher, my student, this woman who became my student, bought a camera, an expensive iridology camera for that day and time. And she was my student 8 years ago, but she had certified about 8 or 10 years prior to that. So this camera sat in the corner of her office in the original packaging for all those years. She had never opened it. When she came into my classes, by the end of the 2nd class, she was starting to get it. Now, I've changed the curriculum a little bit. Now it would be the end of your 3rd class. But she sent me an email. She said, "I get this. I didn't understand before how to use iridology in my practice, but now I get it. I've opened my camera and set it up, and I'm starting to take photographs." I was so excited to hear that. That was brilliant. But what do you really need? You need some kind of a magnifying device and a really good pen light. Now, this is a really old pen light. I should probably replace it with an LED light, but I'm attached to this because I've had it for 40 years. Same with this. This is a jeweler's loupe with an 8x magnification. So I like my students to have a pen light with a magnifying device, and I also like them to have a lighted magnifying device. Now, the reason for this is these lights are fixed, and they are fixed to aim to the center of the field of vision with your magnifying glass. Sometimes you want to change that angle. You want to cast shadows to see different things in the iris. And that's where having a separate pen light works really well. So this is from Amazon. I actually just got this one. I just love it. It has 3 interchangeable lenses. So I've got, I think it's a 2.5, a 5, and a 10x magnification, which is brilliant because I pop them in and out as I need to change them. And I can either use the lighting that is attached here, or I can use my pen light if I want to cast shadows. So really, to start doing iridology well, all you need is lighting devices that have really white light, not yellowish, not bluish, and a magnifying device. So for under $50 US, you can be set to go. Much more reasonable pricing. And so I just really encourage you to go ahead and get that. I still use my handheld equipment. Yes, I use my camera. I take photos of my clients the first time they come in, and then I do annual updates on them. So I do use my camera a lot. But for just checking quick little things, if I don't have my client's file open on my computer to look at the photos on the computer screen, I'll just whip out my little light and have a quick look. Or if I'm working with a really young child, I know I'm not going to be able to put this camera right up against their face. So I'll use my handheld device, and sometimes I won't even use that. Sometimes I'll just take them over to the window where the natural light can flood past their face, and I will just see what I can see that way. So you don't need the big fancy camera. When you know you love iridology and you know it's going to be an important part of your practice, then you want to buy a camera. And I use this one, but I have another one that I want to buy, and I think they're both equally brilliant for different reasons. Let's do a quick review of the endocrine system, because that is what we are talking about today. But just before that, I have a pop quiz for you. I just want to make sure you were listening. What equipment do you need to start doing iridology? You can check off 2 answers. What equipment do you need to start doing iridology? I just don't want you getting the wrong equipment the first time around. Fabulous. Everyone was paying such good attention. Thank you. Well done. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, let's get back to the endocrine system so we can start looking at some eyes. The endocrine system is made up of glands that secrete their hormones directly into the bloodstream, right? You learned that in your anatomy and physiology, right? Those substances are the hormones that regulate everything. So starting at the top, we have the pineal, the pituitary, and the hypothalamus, thyroid and parathyroids, thymus, pancreas, adrenal glands, and in the woman we have ovaries. Now during pregnancy, the placenta is also an endocrine gland. Now we know from more recent research that there are other tissues in the body that also function as endocrine glands. The heart, the gastrointestinal tract, the kidneys, the skin, fat tissue or adipose tissue, they all have endocrine functions as well. Well, today we're really going to be focusing on looking at markers that we can correlate to help us understand why women have hormonal imbalances. Let's start with this case. This is a young lady who is about 20 years old, 20, 21. And we're just going to start out with saying there isn't really just one single marker that we're going to look at. We're going to look at groups of markers because when we put them together, it tells a better story. So the first thing we're looking is that this woman, this young woman, is what we call polyglandular. So that means that she has a lot of these flower petals in her eyes. Don't her eyes look like daisies almost? And those flower petals are all attached to this fiber that is coming around here. Now, for those of you that already have iridology training, you're going to notice that I'm not going to use all of the jargon that you and I could use if we were talking privately. But because there are some people on the call who don't have that extensive training, I'm going to keep things very simple rather than using jargon that might just get tangled up for them. So polyglandular means lots of flower petals attached to the fiber that's coming around here. This is a subtype of irises. It's a physical integrity constitutional subtype. And it tells us that this body is more prone to having problems with pancreas, thyroid, adrenal glands, and potentially ovaries as well. So this young woman came into me because she was having menstrual cramps that were just insane, and her cycles were very long. So not the menstrual flow itself, but the interval from day one of this cycle to day one of the next cycle was long, typically running about 45 days. So I asked her about her blood sugars, and of course, she actually comes from a very well-read family, and her mother is really into this holistic stuff. So I could term it as blood sugars, and she knew exactly what I was looking for. And she said, excuse me, she said that her blood sugars tend to be somewhat erratic, but she also has a lot of food problems. There are a lot of foods that upset her stomach or cause intestinal and bowel issues. So eating has become a huge problem for her. We started exploring, first off, proteins that she could easily take to campus. She's a university student, and so when she goes to school, her days on campus are long. She doesn't like carrying a thermos because it's extra weight, and she doesn't have a locker on campus. So that meant we needed to come up with protein ideas that she could carry with her that didn't need refrigeration and didn't need a thermos. So we found some ideas, we created some ideas that she quite liked, and she was able to do it. The goal was to get her eating a little protein every couple of hours so that we could stabilize her blood sugars. I've seen menstrual cramps be a result of blood sugar issues and mineral issues. And of course, minerals affect hormone levels, right? And so we needed to get her blood sugars balanced first and keep them balanced for a couple of months so we could take that step back and watch to see what the cramping would do with that. And once we had done that, I then suggested adding a calcium and magnesium supplement. It had other minerals and vitamins with it, but it was primarily calcium and magnesium to help with the cramping. Now, my favorite calcium magnesium mineral supplement is the Skeletal Strength from Nature Sunshine products. There are also indicators in her eyes that suggest that both the stomach and the intestinal tracts might have some issues, but we're not going to go into those today, and we'll cover them actually in detail in the course Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology, which is starting later this week. So the first indicator that we can look for in some women is that they are polyglandular. When we see polyglandular, we know they are at a greater risk for hormonal disturbances and for cramping and things like that. So I just briefly mentioned that Confident Nutritionist course, Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology. Man, I need to put my tongue in straight tomorrow. The course starts on Wednesday, January 17th, and it runs till June. 2 sections available. You can be in an 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. class or a 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. class. And these are webinar-based classes with live webinars. So much like we're doing now, except that for the classes, I unmute the lines. I keep my classes small, and so I unmute the lines so we can have ongoing dialogue. So space is limited to 5 students per class. And And so it is all about getting information to you again. This is the registration URL. Make a note of it, but don't go there yet because I've got so much more information to share with you today. Like that's only the first case out of 7, right? We've got a lot to cover. Nutritional support, nutrition to support your healthy hormone levels for the polyglandular subtype. There are so many nutrients, including foods and supplements, that can impact hormone balance positively. And anytime we improve nutrition, we have an impact on everything in the body, right? So with this young client, we looked at this list of leafy greens, nuts, seeds, protein, water, whole grains, and fiber. And she already had, how do I put this? The foods she was eating were generally really good choices. She just didn't have a broad enough variety or a high enough quantity. So she was basically undernourished. You know, if she had been a 3-year-old, she was probably getting enough calories and nutrients, but she wasn't a 3-year-old. So what I'm interested in knowing from you is, are there any other foods that you like to recommend to support the hormones? Any specific dietary actions that you have found useful? We'll just give you a second to type that into the chat box and click the send button. I'm just going to grab a drink of water here. We'll just give you a minute to do that. Okay, and if you're typing, keep typing. I think some of you might be writing books for me, which is great. Love it, love it. And so, you know, aside from this list, I tend to get kind of nitpicky and laser in on things so that if they're not eating enough meat or enough protein, we'll really talk about the protein. We'll talk about the quality of protein, the selection of protein, why certain proteins are better than others. And I typically strive to get my clients to go for about a 50-50 breakdown between vegan or not vegan proteins. I think that's really important that they have that variety and that they don't necessarily overload on protein, because I really believe that, especially with the polyglandular type, they probably need 5 protein servings a day. And so you can't do all that from animal source or we're going to run into certain problems, right? And we can't necessarily have them do all organic. I don't know what organics cost where you live, but here, if you're talking organic anything, double the price. Just double it. And so that's out of reach for a lot of people. Here's our next iris that we're looking at. We're looking for pancreas pigment and contraction furrows. So remember I said we often want to put 2 or 3 things together as we do this. This is a female age 35. She is slender, fit, and active, but she's got orange right up here and rust-colored pigments sitting in her eyes. Orange and rust tell us pancreas may want to be out of balance. And the rust can also suggest that the liver may not be willing to do its job. So the rust can give us a couple of different pieces of information that we need to ask about. If the pancreas is out of balance, and if she's flirting with any amount of insulin resistance, she could be heading into polycystic ovarian syndrome. If her liver is out of balance, she may not be creating cholesterol well enough to keep her estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone in balance. Now, when we add to that the fact that she has these contraction furrows, these crinkles, those of you who have, say, Jensenian background might call them nerve rings or cramp rings. When we add the contraction furrows to it, it tells us that she spends most of her time functioning in her sympathetic nervous system. Now, remember back to your anatomy and physiology, and what you'll remember is that the sympathetic nervous system is fight, flight, or freeze. All right, this is your initial reaction to stress. So even though this young woman doesn't think she's stressed out, her adrenal glands especially are always on the ready. They are always watching for that next crisis, and they are ready to spring into action. So as a result, this young woman burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium with record speed. Now, here's the big challenge. She's trying to get pregnant. Has been trying for about 3 years. She's just started coming to me. Her doctors cannot find what is wrong. Husband checks out perfectly. This prospective mom checks out perfectly. There's nothing. Hormones appear to be balanced. She has an excellent an excellent diet. But these pigments, the orange and the rust in here, where's my mouse? It's run away. Wrong mouse. There we go. The rust and the orange pigments tell us that everything she's doing may still not be quite enough to help her conceive. She likely, as these pigments suggest, has inherited a slight insulin resistance. Her medical tests keep coming back in the normal range, but remember that when these normal ranges for medical tests are determined, they aren't determined using a cross-section of healthy people. They're determined using a cross-section of the general population. So we've got really unwell people in there lengthening out what these normal ranges are. So she comes out on the high normal or low normal end of a lot of the tests. The doctor says, you're fine, you're normal. And I'm thinking, I don't agree. I don't agree. You're coming out just a little bit too far away from the median. And that means that you're probably out of balance. So the questions I asked her were, and see if these are the ones you would have asked. And, if you come up with more, please type them in. Do you crave carbohydrates? Right? If the pancreas is out of balance, her blood sugars would be out of balance, she would crave. Her answer was no. Do you eat sweets, refined carbs, or drink alcohol? Her answer was no to the sweets and refined carb. And she actually had recently cut out even her minimal social alcohol intake. So she's doing well there. Is there a family history of any kind of diabetes or obesity? And her answer was no. So I suggested that she take up a relaxing hobby like walking or yoga. This wasn't for exercise. This was to make her shut down, give her body that opportunity to shut off that sympathetic response. Let her go into a parasympathetic mode, into deep relaxation, at least once a day. I also suggested that she use my favorite prenatal vitamin from Designs for Health, which is called Prenatal Pro. And in addition to that, we added the moderate potency B complex with vitamin C to help with the way her nervous system works. And from there, it was the Nature Sunshine product that in Canada is called Stress Formula. In the US, it's called NutriCalm. And I also suggested adding a calcium supplement, again, just like we did for the previous client. And again, I went to the Nature Sunshine Skeletal Strength because of its balance of calcium, magnesium, other trace minerals, and vitamins and herbs. So there's so many other markers in this eye, as you know if you've got some iridology background, and we can't possibly look at everything and understand how to apply it all in your practice, but you are getting a glimpse into how much iridology can guide your sessions with your clients, both for questions to ask and for suggestions to make. So what kinds of foods, I'm going to have you type this in before I click the slide. What kinds of foods do you know mess up hormones? What kinds of foods do you know mess up hormones? Hopefully you've got some lightning fingers going and you found the questions box where you can type in things. And we'll just give you another second. You know, I've been fighting a bit of a cough, so I'm just going to take a moment and grab a throat lozenge so that my voice lasts for this entire class. It would be a shame if my voice gave out before we were done today. So if you are typing something, and I apologize for that disgusting sound of a throat lozenge in my mouth while I'm talking. If you are typing something, would you raise your hand so I know to wait for you? Okay. Alrighty, thank you. So some of the answers we've got coming through are they take away alcohol. That's always a good one to take away. And caffeine. Yeah. And the sugars. Sugars are bad. Yeah. Right on. Refined carbs. Absolutely. So here's the ones that I really focus on with my clients. Caffeine, refined sugar, that should be slash carbs, and excessive red meat consumption. Excellent. Thanks for weighing in on that. So aside from learning iridology, what else are we going to be teaching in Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology? Here's what you're going to learn. How to create programs right in your sessions and eliminate unpaid homework time. We start talking about things like this as soon as we start looking at eyes in the class. We do a ton of practice in the class. I put my students on what I call the hot seat, and we'll look at an eye and I'll choose a student and say, tell me what you know about this eye based on what we've learned. Choose someone else and say, based on what we've already talked about, what questions would you ask? Based on what we've already learned, what foods would you recommend? What foods would you suggest taking away? So we start right away with learning how to create the programs right in your sessions and eliminating that unpaid homework time. We learn how to do a base assessment in 5 minutes or less without lengthy intake paperwork. Save time and do better intake assessments. If you are looking at eyes for more than 5 minutes, you're squinting too hard. Now, squinting too hard is my way of saying you're looking at things and trying to turn them into problems that don't really exist, right? You don't need to do that. You'll also learn how to ask only the questions that are relevant to your client's needs based on that shopping list of things your client needs help with and what you see in the iris. You'll learn how to prioritize the problems your client needs help with. Not all problems are equal. Not all problems need to be addressed from the very get-go all at the same time, right? Sometimes we need to, well, all the time actually, we need to put things in order of this is the first, this is the second, this is the third. And you should, from your first iris assessment, be able to come up with a sequence of about 6 things and the order you'd work with them in, and that becomes your first 6 appointments with that client. So one client or one appointment a month for 6 months. Does that sound good? Repeat business, having your clients come back to you and giving you a chance to prove what you know and develop that rapport without giving your time away for free. We're going to teach you how to connect what you know about nutrition and or herbology with what you discover using dynamic iridology. And you're seeing how we do that here with the questions and things like that. We'll teach you how to do a deeper assessment for more direction and a deeper understanding of your client's needs when you need to. So what's included in the class? It's 20 sessions, approximately 2 hours each as live webinars. Each class is recorded in its entirety and posted on the student website. And actually, this time around, there's an added bonus in that we have the 11 a.m. and the 6 p.m. classes. And so they share the same website. So both the morning and the evening sessions will be recorded and posted to the student website. So you actually get to listen to the other class and see if I said anything differently, right? See if I told them stories I didn't tell you, you know, because sometimes that happens, right? The content is edited into short topic videos and it's stored on your student site for you to review for 18 months from our start date. After 18 months, you are migrated to the alumni site because it's just too hard to keep too many websites up to date, right? So everyone who's graduated, finished the coursework, gets migrated to the alumni site at the 18-month mark. And that's where I post new materials that I generate, do things to keep you in the loop and up to date. The textbook is a digital textbook. It's made available in weekly installments and you can download it as it comes out for you. We have cheat sheets. Everything that you learn is condensed into a book of charts and tables. So rather than having a 100-page textbook or a 150-page textbook, whatever it is, it's distilled down to about 50 pages of charts and tables of this is the name of the marker, this is what it looks like, this is what the questions you'd ask, this is what it means, this is the diet recommendations you'd make, the supplement recommendations, the lifestyle recommendations, the kinds of symptoms that usually go with this marker. It's all on these charts. This is what my students love. The textbook is great, but they all say they use the cheat sheets all the time. Each class starts with a review of the previous week. We need to make sure you're solid because we build on what we already know. Each week has lots of in-class practice and interaction. I try to allow 30 minutes at the end of each class for us to practice what we've learned so far in class, not just that day, but so far. You get a certificate of attendance for attending 80% of the classes live. So if you have other certifications that require continuing education hours, often this certificate will give you the validation for 40 hours to apply to whatever programs you need to maintain. And we have a private Facebook group that is just for my students and my alumni. It's where you get in-between class support and after graduation support. We also have a monthly Q&A webinar where students can submit either photographs of eyes they're working with or written descriptions of those eyes for us to discuss so that we can support you in your learning. Get lots of access to me in the classes and on the Facebook group and in the Q&A webinars. So it's not like you're doing any kind of a correspondence course at all. This is like going to a classroom class where there's extra office hours afterwards. Let's look at another polyglandular set of eyes. This is a woman who, when I met her first, she was 24 years old and she was married at the age of 24. Now, interestingly, she had gained 60 pounds in the 4 months prior to her wedding. Then just 4 months after getting married, she had an ectopic pregnancy. And that's when she came to me in my clinic. Her doctor had diagnosed her with polycystic ovarian syndrome. So I want you to look for a couple of specific things here in her eyes. We have polyglandular, so we've got some lacuna, especially this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. We've got these various lacuna that are attached to this fiber that's coming around. What we also have is right here, we've got that fiber goes bonk and pokes out into a pancreas zone. We have this one that also goes bonk and pokes out into another pancreas zone. So we know that polyglandular means she's prone to pancreas, adrenal, thyroid, and possibly ovarian disturbances. She's got the fiber is bumping out into pancreas zone, so that's putting stress on those pancreases, and there's the pancreas rather, and there's some other things tied into that that get a little more advanced. And we also have right here this large marking sitting right in the thyroid zone. Well, you probably already know that any form of blood sugar disorder is usually accompanied by a thyroid imbalance, right? Now we're going to add one more layer to this. This huge marking, actually I think I'm supposed to be clicking here to show you arrows, there we go, sorry. This huge marking goes right up to include the pituitary and the hypothalamus. So here we have the hypothalamus possibly not telling the pituitary what to do properly, and then the pituitary taking those messed up instructions and sending them to the thyroid, and the thyroid taking those messed up instructions and sending them to the pancreas and affecting metabolism that way. Now, as we look at all of this, we need to remember that, yeah, we've got these markings in here, but there are 14 different kinds of lacunae or flower petals that we teach in Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology. And every one of those tells us a different story about the body. What we did with this young lady was we cleaned up her diet. She was raised in a German household. Rich, fatty, and sweet would be how you would describe her diet. Really lousy, actually. And so we put her on a low glycemic diet, got rid of all of the refined foods, got her onto massive amounts of vegetables. I mean, she was motivated. She wanted to lose that 60 pounds and she wanted a baby, and there was nothing going to stand in her way. So she was motivated. She did the diet to the nth degree. She did not cheat even so much as looking at a picture of food that was not allowed. She did not cheat. She lost all of that weight. It took her about 4 months. She took it off about as fast as she put it on. It balanced her hormones so beautifully that she now has 4 children. And she has since become a personal trainer and a Spartan obstacle race competitor and trainer, which is no small feat, actually. So she really, even though she is polyglandular with very specific pancreatic markings, she was able to, when we understood what was out of balance in her body, we were able to address that with her nutrition and get her back into balance. And now she just loves the way she feels, has no intention of ever putting on the weight again. And it's just, she's such a ball of fire. She's so much fun. Here's another young woman. You're going to get the sense that I do an awful lot of work with infertility and high-risk pregnancy, and I do. That's probably in my clinic, my number one passion. I love solving those kinds of issues. This is another young woman. She's 35. She has polycystic ovarian syndrome as well. But notice how different her eyes are. They don't look polyglandular at all. And they don't need to be polyglandular to be polycystic ovarian syndrome. Her temperature charts, because I have my clients that are working on getting pregnant, chart their basal metabolic temperature. Her temperature charts were really erratic. Temperatures up and down and left, right, and center. Oh my stars. I called it the profile of the Rocky Mountains. They were so, her temps were so up and so down so crazily. And her cycles were averaging 60 days long. Research has proven the longer the cycle, the less likely the woman is to get pregnant. So we needed to get her hormones balanced to get her cycles down to a reasonable length where she could possibly conceive. So what we're looking at here in particular is 2 things. Again, we're using 2 markers and putting them together to give us some story here. First off, we have the contraction furrows. From previous slides, we know that these mean that her nervous system runs on that always ready to fight level. It tells us that she burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium really, really quickly. Then we also see that she has black spokes. These are known as radial furrows, radiating outwards. When these black spokes start close to the pupil's edge and break through that fiber that we've seen in other eyes, the black spokes intensify what the contraction furrows mean, because these are telling us that there are interruptions in nerve feeds. Okay, so what we see from this is she lives totally in that zone of there's got to be a monster waiting around the corner waiting to jump out at me. So we needed to bring her down. Add to all of this the fact that in both eyes, She has a radial furrow going right up through that pituitary zone again. So we know the pituitary is going to be impacting things as well. Also, we notice that she has radial furrows reaching out into the ovary zones as well. So we've got one up here and we've got one right here that are reaching, actually it's this one, reaching out into the ovary zones. So the ovaries are being impacted by the stress as well. She's not overweight. She has no weight to lose. Looking at her, you'd think she was in perfect health, but she's got this little imbalance. So I asked her about sweet and carb cravings. Oh yeah, that was her middle name, carbohydrate. I asked her about her exercise, and she said she prefers to watch her husband play soccer more than she likes to do anything active. Problem. She has the additional risk factor that she's Asian American. Asian Americans are in the top 4 ethnicities for developing type 2 diabetes. Polycystic ovarian syndrome always involves a level of insulin resistance, which is type 2 diabetes. So her diet at the time when we first met was white rice. And well, the easiest way to put it is this, that she had retained the easy parts of her traditional diet and the worst parts of the North American diet. So breakfast for her was often a sweet roll and juice. How's your blood sugar doing just hearing that? Mine kind of goes, oh, I can't do this. Now, she is also very, very motivated. She doesn't want diabetes, and she does want a baby. So we cleaned up her diet, got rid of the sweet rolls and juice for breakfast, increased her protein because she was eating very little of that. We really jacked up the salad and the low-carb vegetable intake. We also got her walking 30 minutes each day. And for the first time in her life, remember, she's 35, first time in her life, I've only been working with her for about 4 months now. She's had 3 cycles that are textbook perfect, where she has that beautiful follicular phase, the nice temperature jump up to the luteal phase, and she holds that long enough, and her total cycles are running 28 to 30 days. So now she is totally right in the ballpark for being able to get pregnant. The thing that really messes me up, it drives me crazy with this stuff, is that her doctor diagnosed her with insulin resistance type 2 diabetes, gave her almost no information about how to fix her diet, and did not tie it into the fact that she couldn't get pregnant. This isn't rocket science. Educating our clients is so important, so very important. So what exactly will you learn in Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology? Oh, I have markers in there too that I forgot about. You will learn beginning to intermediate iridology, which is pretty intense. You think, well, I want advanced. Well, you can do an extremely powerful reading with beginning and intermediate iridology. We teach sclerology as well, and both the iridology and the sclerology are at a level to prepare you for the IPA, that's International Iridology Practitioners Association, certification exam if you choose to do that, and there's an additional fee for that payable to IPA. We tie in the basic nutrition and the basic herbology as they relate to iridology. So to be clear, I'm not actually teaching nutrition and I'm not teaching herbology, but I'm teaching you key points and how to tie them in so that you will understand how to incorporate what you already know. And I will also teach you, of course, how to create and address therapeutic priorities for your clients. That's so important. Here's another client. I saw her for the first time just actually about 2 weeks ago. She's brand new to me. And it was pretty clear to me that she was also polycystic ovarian syndrome. No doctor had actually told her that. She's about 21 years old. And no doctor had ever told her that she was PCOS. So, of course, I can't tell her she's PCOS. I'm not a doctor. So I gave her a list of the symptoms and I suggested that she should Google it to see if she thinks that's what she has. When I asked her about her menstrual periods, I said, how often do you have a period? And she said, well, they're always 3 to 4 weeks late. Wait a minute. Always 3 to 4 weeks late. So you're telling me that you have a period every 7 to 8 weeks? Yeah, they're 3 to 4 weeks late. I'm going, no, they're just unbalanced. They're not late. They're unbalanced. Your pattern is they are 7 to 8 weeks. Her eyes look pretty familiar, don't they? We've seen so many of these markings in other eyes that we've looked at already. They're dark brown. The dark brown tells us that there's a predisposition towards some liver imbalance, probably. She has contraction furrows, so she lives in that really intense zone. She's a university student, of course she does, but she's always been that way. The contraction furrows have always been there. They will always be there. That is how she was glued together when the chromosomes were doing their thing. And she's got the radial furrows that intensify the contraction furrows. So with all of that, and with where her radial furrows are sitting, notice she's got them going up into, got one right here behind that glare, and even this one into the pituitary and hypothalamus again, right? So we've got that happening. We've got a slight radial furrow right here in an ovary, and we've got a slight one right here as well. So she's got it all there again. So these eyes look so familiar. We talked about her lousy diet at university. She was eating in the cafeteria because it was cheap and easy. But she said, she hasn't been feeling very well. She's been gaining weight and her energy's been low and her moods have been a little low. And so she really wanted to start cooking her own food. So we started talking about what should she be eating? What should she be cooking? And then I looked at her sclerae. And this is what I saw. I saw blood vessels that have a little bit of a blue patch at the end and a little bit of brown fogging around them. This is what we call the fermentation sign. With everything that we've seen so far in the irides, it's all been genetic. It's been what the person has inherited. These fermentation signs in the sclerae, however, are dynamic. She's earned them. She put them there all by herself, but she can unearn them as well. Fermentation signs are a strong indication that she is currently dealing with a yeast or a fungal infection of some kind. Did you know that candida or yeast is a very common symptom of people who are diabetic and type 2 diabetic? Because they have so much sugar floating in their bloodstream that the yeast just goes crazy for it. So, again, she said she wanted to get control of her diet. So we talked about an anti-candida diet protocol, very low carb, very high protein, and lots of leafy vegetables. And we talked about how that would help her to get rid of the candida or bring the candida into balance. We don't want to get rid of it completely. We just want to bring it into that balance that's good for our body. And that this diet would also really help to rebalance her hormones and to get her periods down probably to the 4 to 5 week mark and balance out her PMS. I also suggested that she should walk for 30 minutes a day. Did you know that there was a study done at Harvard that proved that walking for 30 minutes a day could reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 30%? Just walking alone can do that. So that was very cool. Jumping back to our iris slides, and you'll see that I've kind of blown them up a lot. Can you see how This eye looks like it's got a bit of a rough texture, a bit of a sandy texture on it. If you can see that sandy texture, and it's in both eyes, she's got it here too. If you can see that, would you raise your hand? Just want to make sure that you're seeing that rough texture. It looks like almost a velvety kind of a surface thing. At any rate, that is an indication of someone who doesn't hold her minerals. Thank you very much for weighing in on that. Who doesn't hold her minerals very well, especially calcium. So how important are minerals in hormone balance? Are they critical? Yeah, huh? They're absolutely critical. You don't hold your minerals, you do not have a good hormone balance. So once we've dealt with the candida overgrowth, we're going to take that step back, see what she's got left for symptoms, and when her diet's all cleared up on all that, we'll be able to figure out what we need to do with her minerals. Does she need a truckload of minerals, or has clearing up her diet worked for her? Now, sometimes we don't need to add supplemental minerals when people clean up their diet. Just do a little side trip here. You probably already know this, but it never hurts to do a quick review. And that is, calcium's first role in your body is to neutralize acid. So if you're eating a diet that is making your body be super over acid, all the calcium is going to go to dealing with that acid level first. There won't be anything left for muscles, for nerve impulse transmission, for bone density, for keeping your teeth healthy. Won't be anything left for that. So when we have someone who comes in on a lousy, high acid forming diet, and we fix that diet, we get them to eat really healthfully, and we get them to eat very low acid forming, we reduce how much calcium that body needs to be well, right? And it may be that we get it down enough that this person is able to do their calcium fine with nuts and seeds and green leafy vegetables. So that's why I don't always rush in with a truckload of supplements on that first appointment or two. I want to test things out, see what happens when we change their diet. So we have another little quiz for you. And this one is, again, very practical. It is, which marker intensifies the impact of the contraction furrows? Which marker indicates the impact of contraction furrows? I'm still weighing in. That's great. Love it. Love it. Love it. Well done. Well done. Everybody got it right. Yay. I love it when people pay attention. Really, it's just the best. And so with this, registration for Confident Nutritionist is actually closing tonight at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. There's going to be a few more details and more iridology before we're done at about 1:30, so stay with me. Now, just because it's called Confident Nutritionist, I don't want any of you who are herbalists to think you're going to be slighted or ignored in the class. It just, to say Confident Nutritionist and Herbalist Dynamic Iridology is just too much of a mouthful. But because I'm a master herbalist, I do include the herbs. We talk about herbs as well as nutrition. And so I promise I will give you both sides of that story. So what is the tuition then? This course is a premium course with a premium tuition. It's super high touch. You have lots of access to me in live classes and on the live Q&A webinars. And so you have lots of opportunity to get the support you need, not just for the class, but beyond. It's not a correspondence course. You will not be left to your own devices to figure out the fine tunings and the nuances of iridology. And it's just so important that you know that. So we've got two packages to choose from. The first one is if you know right now you want the training and to be certified by IPA. You want to be an IPA certified iridologist. The tuition for this program is $19.95 Canadian. Now, if you're located in the US, our dollar is exchanging at about a 20% loss right now, which means that your credit card company or your PayPal We'll process that $19.95, and I didn't update this slide, and I apologize. It's going to come out to be about $1,600 for you. That's the complete course, all of the curriculum, plus the first 2 exams for the IPA certification, because these are the parts of the certification that I supervise, that I manage for my students. And then there's the separate written exam that IPA administers as well. So for those of you who know you want certification with an international organization, that's the package you want. If you don't want to certify right now, maybe you don't ever want to certify. Maybe you're certified by another group, you just want more training, then option 2 is for you. And that is $14.95 for the course only. There's no exam prep involved at all. So this is the 40 hours of curriculum, the Q&A sessions, all the recordings, all the Facebook support now and ongoing. You just don't have the stress, if you want to say it that way, of doing the exams. And again, you come out about 20% cheaper than $14.95, which I think is closer to $11.95 right now if I was to do the math again. So in case you're curious about IPA certification, let's just touch on that before we do some more eyes. To be certified by IPA requires the 40 hours of curriculum, and it requires 3 exams. The first exam is one that I supervise for you. It's 10 iris analyses, which I supply to you digitally. So it doesn't matter where you are on the face of the planet. When you're done, you snail mail those back to me, or you courier them back to me, so I have the hard copies. I mark your work, and then we spend about an hour in a private tutorial going over your work to make sure that you are really solid. If I consistently see the same mistakes, we get it corrected. When I see things that are consistently fabulous, I make sure you know about it. You need to know where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are if you want to be the best you can be. Once you finish those 10 and we've marked them and I'm really feeling good about where you're headed, then I give you part 2. This is a case study that IPA provides to me, and I provide it to you. When you're done, you get the hard copy back to me. I mark your work, and then again, we spend an hour going over this one case, because now you're getting really close to being ready for your final exam. When you and I both agree that you are rock solid ready for the written exam, I let IPA know, and then you send in your form and your exam fee to IPA, and they will send back the part 3 of the exam, which is a 4-hour written exam. Multiple choice, matching, fill in the blanks, labeling diagrams, that kind of thing. It's made of 7 sections, and you need to get 80% on each section to pass. If you miss out on 1 or 2 or 3 sections or whatever, if you miss out on some of them, you only have to redo those sections, and it's a $75 rewrite fee. Okay, so that is the certification protocol, the basics of it that you need to be aware of to help you decide if you want to certify with IPA. So again, whether you want to certify now or later or never, it doesn't matter. We've got a package for you. If you want it, know right now you want to certify, great, opt in for that package. If you're not sure, opt in for the other package. So why would you want to study with me? Well, I've been where you are. I understand financial and time constraints of running a business, taking care of a family. Remember, I've done this while having and raising 7 children. Our baby is now 19 years old. Taking care of home and friends and other important commitments. My parents are now aging, not very healthfully, so we've got that as well. I get it. I get being pulled in a million directions. I understand learning needs. We all don't learn in the same way. Some of us are visual, some of us are auditory, and some of us are kinesthetic, right? So we need to be incorporating all of those if we can. I understand there's a lot to learn about iridology and sclerology, and it has changed so much from when I first started out in the 80s. Very little of what I learned about iridology back then is actually accurate. It's all been proven wrong. And so it can be really overwhelming if you've got previous training, relearning things, unlearning and relearning, and sorting out old from new. It can be overwhelming if you're just starting from scratch and it feels like there's a lot of jargon, because there is. But I've got all of these pieces, lots of pieces to support your learning. It's less expensive to study with a Canadian teacher who charges in Canadian dollars, just like you saw back on that previous page. Saves you, depending on the dollar, anywhere from 20 to 30%. And I'm committed to personally to your learning. You won't get passed off to an assistant. I am the person you will be working with, period. Here is a set of eyes that belong to a lovely lady who's in her 50s. She is definitely menopausal. And the challenge here is there's no marker in the eyes for menopause. But do you see some of the things we've already seen before? Namely, those contraction furrows. Well, she's got hot flashes that are crazy bad. And when I say crazy bad, I mean crazy bad, like nearly putting her over the edge. She has those contraction furrows, so she is living in her sympathetic nervous system. Her adrenal glands are always on guard, watching for the next crisis. And to add to that, she has had a ton of stress in the last 10 years with serious family issues, deaths in the family, just economical challenges as the economy here has tanked. She has really shouldered a lot of stress. And when you're under stress, hot flashes don't get better. They get worse. She eats fairly well. She loves to be active, so she runs, she skis, and she teaches belly dancing. So she's not sitting around doing nothing. She also loves her coffee. And we've worked together for several years, and I've tried for all those years to get her off the coffee. And I've tried to help her understand what it's actually doing to her and her adrenal glands. And so finally, these hot flashes were just messing her up so badly, disturbing her sleep, affecting her moods, making her feel just awful. So the analogy I gave her was that coffee is to the adrenal glands like a whip is to a tired horse. Now, she lives in a small town. She knows about horses. So I told her, you can keep pushing your adrenal glands with the coffee, but it's like whipping that tired horse. One day, the tired horse is just not going to get up. It's going to be so used to being whipped that it's not going to get up again. And then you're going to be in real trouble. So I suggested that she try cutting the coffee out for just 1 week. She only drank a couple of cups a day. And it was really the ritual. She likes the warm mug. She likes sitting in her favorite chair in the sunshiny window, sipping on her cup of hot whatever. And so we talked about put something else in the cup, still sit in the chair, still sit in the sunshine, but cut out the coffee for a full week. If her hot flashes were improving over that week, then she could decide what she wanted to do. Did she value the coffee, or did she value having fewer hot flashes? What did she want? Well, on about day 2, I got an email from her where she said, oh my goodness, I wish I'd listened to you at the very beginning. My hot flashes are down by more than 50%. They're less intense and they're way fewer. Judith, if I'd known what you were saying was right, I would have done it a long time ago. No, she wasn't ready. So there she is. Her hot flashes are significantly improved. Now, as she's actually been off the coffee for a few months, no more hot flashes. She has an occasional warm wave, no more drippy sweaties. She's pretty comfortable most of the time. She's perfectly fine not drinking coffee. Now, like I said, she's been a client of mine for several years, and she likes to come in every 3 months. And we actually do her appointments by Skype because she lives 2.5 hours away. And so, but I always have her iPhotos up on one of my computers while I'm Skyping her on the other one, so that I can look at her iPhotos while I'm talking with her and can correlate what I'm seeing to what she's telling me. She's not the only one who is loving how this works. That, we see things in the eyes. It explains why she's feeling the way she is, and we can get in there and work on things. But a lot of my other students love this too. Here's what some of them have said. This comes from Michelle Davies. She actually was a certified iridologist before she came to Confident Nutritionist. I've studied iridology with David Pesic. He's got a huge reputation. And she has her level 1, 2, and 3 with him, and iridology in professional practice with Darko Pearce in 2012. And this is the most amazing iridology course I've taken. She's taken a lot of courses. Mine was the most amazing. Cool. Judith's course is top on my list. Judith is very enthusiastic and excited as we are in the course. She has many good examples and stories to share that makes the course that much more real in today's world. Judith's iridology course is very informative, descriptive, and complete as it contains the most accurate iridology, including sclerology, and most importantly, how to put it all together and make a proper assessment. I feel most confident in my nutrition practice now. That was very cool. Allison Taylor says this, and she was in the midst of her holistic practitioner certification program. The amount of learning in this course is enormous, and there's a lot of depth to this course. Judith's teaching is professional and easy to learn as she stops for questions, has great slides, and reviews every week. Her students are her priority, and their understanding of the information is imperative to her. There's a student website page with all the PDFs for downloading and videos to watch. The page is easily accessible. There's also a private Facebook page for questions, comments, assessments, and just keeping in touch between weeks. It is a one-of-a-kind course. I would definitely recommend this course to anyone who's even thinking of taking an iridology course. Judith is a wealth of knowledge and a fantastic mentor. I love this course, and I know you will too. And the last student we want to hear from today is Karen Choate. She is a certified natural health practitioner with a specialty in gut disorders and digestion. She says, "Thank you, Judith. It has been such a pleasure studying under you and learning from you. I really miss our classes." She wrote this after she'd completed her coursework. She's now in her exam phase. "But I'm looking forward to completing this component of iridology and continuing my education, most hopefully with you. I have become much more comfortable with taking photos of my patients, and I have begun to implement this incredible work in my practice quite successfully. It truly has helped immensely in my decisions and assessments. Thank you for sharing your skill, your knowledge, and your patience." Because she is in a clinical situation, she frequently submits cases to our Q&As for us to discuss. So that's great. It helps her to get extra clarity on what she's seeing, but it gives everybody else a learning opportunity as well. So it's a blessing both ways. This is another set of eyes for a client who is menopausal. She's 58 years old, and she's been on hormone replacement for 3 years. She went on them because she found that the effects of menopause were kind of messing up her head. And she's a social worker, and so she was recognizing that she wasn't quite right. She doesn't have a huge holistic background, so her first option was to go to the doctor, and she got the hormones. The hormones have done a good job. They're bioidenticals, which be that as it may, but they've done a great job of stabilizing her and helping her to keep her head attached properly, right? And so that is really important that she did that. I am not anti-drug. I am pro-judicious use of drugs. She's gotten to the point where she wants to get off the hormones. She knows that using them for much longer than this is not going to be in her best interest, and so she wants to stop them. But you don't stop them cold turkey. She needs to ease off them very slowly. So I suggested a program, a plan for coming off, but I also really underscored that she needed to talk to her doctor to make sure her doctor agreed that the direction we were thinking of taking was the right one. And the doctor did agree, so that was great. These eyes again are looking very familiar to you by now. You're seeing contraction furrows and you're seeing radial furrows. We've seen those a lot, right? And we seem to almost see them more in these darker eyes. She has one other marker that suggests her liver enzymes might be out of balance. Now, you already know the liver manufactures your cholesterol and it denatures your hormones after they've finished doing their job so that you can excrete them in your urine, right? Well, she's got this marker that says her liver may not be the happiest of campers. And that is this white ring that is sitting onto the edge of her iris. Now you'll notice coming up here that there's an edge right in here. Okay, so we're not talking about this blue stuff that's out here. We are talking about this white, thickened, milky stuff. It looks kind of like white glue got spilled in the eye, because you can continue to see the edge of the iris right here. So this stuff is what we're talking about. This is called the lipemic diathesis. Now you might have learned this if you were Jensening as a cholesterol ring or a sodium ring. The liver is intimately involved with your fat balance and your cholesterol, right? So this sign makes us ask questions about cholesterol and triglycerides as well. The liver is so important in denaturing those hormones after they've done their job. So aside from alcohol, probably the harshest thing for your liver that you can put into your body is coffee. Now, this woman is Lebanese, and she loves her coffee. Specifically, she loves, I think she said it was Turkish coffee, which is brewed a specific way, and I guess it's pretty strong. When I suggested that the coffee was going to need to disappear, she did what most of us do when someone tells us we can't keep doing our favorite thing. She dug her heels in and said, no way, not doing it. Can't make me. No way. So I backed down a little, and rather than taking it away completely, I suggested we wean it down, that she experiment with cutting it back and putting something else in her coffee mug. And that at the same time that we really super increase her leafy greens to give us the balance of both reducing the amount of abuse, but increasing the amount of support for the liver. So being a social worker, she really likes to see things that have been researched. So I was able to share with her a study that was done in 2015, and it was reported in a journal called Menopause. 1,806 women were assessed for hot flashes and sweating, and that was correlated with their coffee drinking. And it was shown that coffee drinking has a significant impact, making vasomotor symptoms, so hot flashes and sweating, worse. So while my client didn't really like the report, she appreciated that there was science behind what I was saying. And so as she's reduced the coffee and continued to work on reducing it, she's making good progress. And she's finding that as she increases her leafy greens and does the other bits of diet work that we're suggesting, that her hormones and her moods seem to be stable and holding nicely. And she's cut the actual replacement hormones down by about 50%. So she's taking time to cut down her meds, and that's a nice little segue into, what if you want to take time to pay for tuition for the course, right? Well, easy. We've got a payment plan. If you're opting for the full program, the for-pay is 4 payments of $549. Now, if you're in Canada, I have to add GST to all of this. And if you're in the States, you don't pay GST, of course. So the Canadians pay $549 plus GST. Americans pay just $549. And if you're interested in the non-certification course, then your for-pay is $419. I love payment plans. I love that they take the stress off the bank account right now. They make things more affordable over the long run. And so if this is something that appeals to you, again, this is your registration page. Scroll right down to the bottom, and you're going to find a link for each of these options that says download the payment plan contract. You do need to download it, print it up, fill it in, and then if you've got a scanner, you can scan it and email it back to me. If you don't have a scanner, take really clear photographs with your phone of each of the pages and attach those to an email and send that to me, and then we're all good. So what are the details for when the class is? Again, it begins this Wednesday, 2 days away, really soon. 11 a.m. Mountain Time. So right now we're at about 1:30 Mountain Time. So you can look at your clock and see what the time difference is. Or 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and you choose which one you want to be in. You don't get to bounce back and forth. Do remember that if you're in North America, and I believe most of Europe as well, has daylight savings time, and that shifts sometime in March for most of us. So we'll want to stay on top of that and make sure that we're not getting messed up by that. So within 1 day of receiving either your PayPal payment for the full tuition or your registration form, payment form for the payment plan, I will be right on top of, and that'll be tomorrow for sure, getting you all the other information you need, your links to participate in the online site, your invitation to the Facebook group, your webinar link. We'll get all of that to you just as quickly as we can. So the benefits of what you will learn in Confident Nutritionist, you're seeing these already, and I know you are. You'll have no more unpaid homework time. Unless there's something you really just want to research because you want to know more, but you won't be doing it specifically for each client. You'll be able to create therapeutic sequences that will help your clients be more successful and keep them coming back to continue their wellness journey. So as I'm working on the first thing we want to work on, I drop hints, I plant seeds that say, yeah, you know, we've seen this in your eyes and this is what we're working on. This is how we want the symptoms to settle out to show us we're making progress. And when we see good progress there, the next thing on your shopping list that I can correlate to your eyes is this. So we'll be working on that next. And I'm always letting them know what we'll be working on in the next session or a couple of sessions away, so they know there is a goal to work towards, right? And it keeps them coming back. I've got clients that don't necessarily come back for the iridology anymore, but that have been my clients now for 30 years. You know, they pop in for 1 or 2 sessions a year just for fine tuning to make sure everything is good. And that's great because it's cheaper to keep a client and it's more lucrative to keep a client than it is to have to find a new one. You'll be able to eliminate your lengthy intake questionnaires. You'll be able to develop rapport within minutes because you've got face-to-face contact, you've got eye contact, you're not looking at a computer or a file while you're doing your intake, and you will be more precise in your client work. Very impressive to get it right the first time, right? Doing an iris assessment is quick and easy. Now, I'm going to do an iris assessment of this iris right now, just of the major things that I'm seeing and what it makes me link to. And you're going to see that when you know your languaging and when you know your markers, you can actually do a core assessment in less than 5 minutes. So if you've got a stopwatch, go ahead and time me. And it doesn't matter what the eye looks like, you can do something. So when you see an eye like this, you think, where do I start? First thing I start with is on my computer screen, it's a blue-gray with some funny orangey green stuff happening over here. The blue-gray tells me this is a lymphatic constitution, which means they're prone to being over acid in their tissues. Over acid is always made worse by poor digestion. So I look in the digestive zones and I see, yep, we've got some issues with the stomach lining. These are genetic issues. If this person has been doing lots that's right for all of their life, they may have no symptoms. If they are doing what I lovingly call the Twinkies and Coca-Cola diet, they may be riddled with symptoms. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to ask them about protein digestion. I'm going to ask them about bowel transit time. I'm going to ask them about any cramping or difficulties with their intestinal tract. I'm going to ask them about blood sugar balance. I'm going to ask them if their energy is up and down like a yo-yo. Do they crave carbohydrates? I'm going to ask them about kidneys. Do they have any urinary tract issues that they know of? Do they have any joint problems? You probably know that with traditional Chinese medicine, joints are related to kidney function. I'm also noting that this is a polyglandular eye. So I'm wondering about pancreas, adrenals, thyroid, and this is a female. We've got eyeliner here. So I'm wondering about ovaries as well. Well, we've got an additional marking sitting in the adrenals, so I'm really going to ask about energy. We don't really have any significant contraction furrows, so she's not a sympathetic nervous system girl. She's a parasympathetic girl. But we're also noting that she's got a pancreas marker here and a pancreas marker here. So we really need to put those with this bright orange and the rust in here and ask her about those blood sugar levels and make sure that that's all okay. We've got liver pigment here that we want to ask about. We've got congestion happening here, so we want to ask about her lymphatic system. And we want to make sure that she keeps that flowing by using a low mucus forming diet and being physically active. Then I'm going to move out into the whites of her eye. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to go, oh, that's an indication that a dynamic indicator, because it's in the sclera, that she may be looking at some kidney issues. Well, she's got the yellow coloring here. That also indicates a higher risk of kidney. And the kidneys themselves sit right down here below the adrenal, and anything that affects the adrenal affects the kidney. So I need to ask her about kidney. I may ask her emotional things like fear. Pancreas is joy. So I may tie those kinds of things in. Then I'm going to look at this. I'm going to see that she's got this yellow blob here and a bit of it happening here as well. But this is not overly significant. This is usually more just because she spent so much time outside. This is a woman who is in her 70s and she's ridden horses all her life. So she has spent a lot of time outside or in dusty indoor arenas. So she's probably done a bit of damage to her sclera. But I'm going to ask a little bit about that and see if there's anything else I need to know. So I know that was under 5 minutes. That was an assessment. That was what I would put in my head and make point form notes about so that I could then prioritize them, choose what is my number one spot based also on her symptoms, and that's where we would start working. So it actually is time to consider getting registered. If you know you want the certification right now, if you know you want the package with the certification, that you will want certification, jump in for the full meal deal. If you're pretty sure you don't want it right now, you might want it later, you might never want it, then jump in for the course only. If you opt for the course only and you change your mind down the road, I have a separate package for people who change their mind and want to add certification onto what they're doing. So there we have it. I invite you to join me for the class. And remember that registration for the class cuts off at 8 o'clock tonight. So that's in just over 6 hours. So if you're going to do it, jump on now and join us and have some fun with us till into June. Have a great day, and we will talk to you later. Bye for now.